You're listening to Bible Truth Feed, a podcast by christadelphianvideo.org for Christadelphians and all those seeking the truth about the Bible message. Join us now as we present our latest episode.
What is considered a decent head covering for sisters? Are headbands okay? Whenever I hear a question like this or a comment about is something okay, it makes me think of Isaiah 45. In verse 19 it says, I, Yahweh, speak righteousness, I declare things that are right. The point of that is the answer must always lie in going back to what God says and finding out the power and meaning behind the principle or the symbol to which he has put in place. So let's come to 1 Corinthians 11 because it's really important for us to see the principle and to have the symbol explained. I must admit too, for me, when I heard of this idea of a headband, I didn't know whether that was like a little headband like this or head. So hopefully we're going to move away from that because the principle hopefully will be the overpowering thing here. Now, in 1 Corinthians 11, we can see that Paul is trying to establish that God is the head of all and Christ his delegated representative, who we must follow. But notice in verse 4 that this is actually beginning with the men. Because Paul begins by saying that a man ought not to cover his head. Now, why does he do that? Because, notice it says, he will dishonour his head. Now, the key to that is that head is used both literally and figuratively. So, man should not have his head, literal, covered, because it dishonours his head, Christ, figuratively speaking. And the answer to why that is explained in verse 7. The man is the image and glory of God. So man's head, which represents Christ, must not be covered because Christ, who is the image and glory of God, as we're told in 2 Corinthians 4 verse 6, must never be veiled. His glory in the ecclesia must be seen, not covered over. So therefore in verse 5, the woman should have a head covering, to the point that it would actually be considered a shame as if her head was shaved. Now why is that the case? Well, verse 7 also puts forward the answer. As man is the image and glory of God, the woman is actually the glory of the man. So this takes us back to creation, as Adam was created out of the ground first, and Eve, different from all the other animals, was taken actually out of Adam's side, not out of the ground. And therefore, it's an allegory of Christ and the ecclesia, as we're told in Ephesians 5. So the woman covers her literal head, because she is showing that her figurative head, the man, ought to have his glory covered in the ecclesia. It has no place for the glory of man to be seen. So the sisters have a beautiful and vital role to show that the glory of man must be covered, put away, and only Christ's glory is to be reflected and seen in the ecclesia. What a really important and vital role that is. Now, it's so important that it's actually possible for us to wear a head covering that destroys the principle. For instance, if you've ever watched the women that go to the races and the hats that they wear, the big, elaborate, look at me hats, that is actually the very opposite to the biblical principle that is meant to be covering the glory of man, not accentuating it. So a decent head covering is one that covers the head. It's one that reflects the biblical principle. So regarding headbands, I think it's hard and also problematic to focus on what percentage of the head is covered. So therefore, I think the focus should be on the desire to uphold that principle so that that is seen. And that's why I think it's also important that 1 Corinthians 11 includes when it is important to wear that symbol. And there's two key things that are mentioned in 1 Corinthians 11. Notice it says when praying or prophesying. So that means when we're talking to God and God is talking to us through his word, when we have meetings like that, that is the time. You also notice in 3 times in this chapter, it talks about when you come together. So it's not just defined to the memorial meeting, it's defined to ecclesial gatherings where that principle of God speaking to us and us speaking to God in prayer is seen. And I think it's sad that in every generation there have been those that have challenged this, because I think it's a beautiful and vital thing, and unfortunately people wear it less and less. And I think by so doing, they can be, whether consciously or unconsciously, be allowing the very thing that the head covering is meant to teach us not to show in the ecclesia, e.g. the glory of man, to be seen. But yet when our sisters wear that head covering, they are reminding all of us that the glory of man, e.g. our own selfish ways and opinions, have no place in the ecclesia, and what should be seen here is our head, which is Christ, his image and his glory.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you found the episode helpful. Don't forget, most of these episodes are also available as videos on our video channel, cdvideo.org. So head over and take a look. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions, please get in touch or leave us a voice message. We love to hear your feedback. You can email us at btf@cdvideo.org. If you enjoyed the episode, then please share it with others. Until next time, may God bless you in your studies and your walk towards God's kingdom. Amen.